This is World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with your host, Carl Gruber. World Awakenings is a podcast dedicated to opening your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how they play an all-important role in our daily life. So join Carl on this enlightening experience as he interviews metaphysical and spiritual experts to discuss, debate, and delve deeply into the hows and whys of this worldwide awakening.
Welcome once again to our health report with the Wizard of Wellness, Dr. Glenn Swartout. Dr. Glenn is a naturopathic healer from Hawaii, and this is the segment of World Awakenings where we ask him to suggest a natural remedy for a health question you'd like to know the answer to. Unfortunately, Dr. Swartout, way too many people in the world suffer from something called chronic inflammation. What is chronic inflammation, and what natural remedy do you suggest?
So chronic inflammation, in modern medicine, we kind of have the idea that it's the boogeyman. It is a bad thing, and it's at the root of most of our chronic degenerative diseases. So yeah, it has very bad effects, but we need to look a little deeper to understand, why do we have that inflammation? Where does it come from? How does the body produce inflammation? What is the body trying to do to heal itself? And why does it get stuck in that mode of trying rather than having maybe acute inflammation and being done with it and moving on to other phases of healing, of repair, regeneration? So inflammation is like a fire burning, right? It's like heat, like fire. And so what is it trying to burn off? It's trying to burn off what doesn't belong in the body. Toxins, pathogens, whatever's there, it's not supposed to be there. How do we move it out? Well, we need to have heat or energy to dissolve what's there. If it's deposited, we've got to dissolve it. That takes energy. And we want to expand the tissue, bring in more fluid to dissolve it as well, to move it through. So we have the classic symptoms of heat and swelling, redness, pain. Those all go along in various degrees with inflammation. So what is it that in our body that produces inflammation? Well, it's not the virus that actually makes the inflammation. It's not the toxin that makes the inflammation. Typically, it's the immune system's response to that foreign invader. So the immune system is pro-inflammatory. And the body always has something to balance it out, right? What's the anti-inflammatory part? Well, would be the adrenals. So the thymus and the adrenals, two parts of the hormonal communication system of the body. And if we are in a state where we're toxic and we're trying to clean that out, and the immune system doesn't have enough power, enough strength to clean it out efficiently, get it done, then it's maybe stuck in that state of trying to cleanse. So inflammation day after day. And that's where we have damage from that inflammation that doesn't ever get to the healing phase of repair and regeneration. Given a quick example, if you have a headache, there's inflammation, right? And you take an aspirin, we're taught to take an aspirin, and we know that takes down the inflammation. Inflammation is acidic in the tissue to dissolve, and acid will dissolve things. When there's not inflammation, it goes to the alkaline side. So what does aspirin do? It alkalizes the tissue, so it reduces the inflammation, kind of like the adrenals would, but it over-alkalizes it. Now you have aspirin plus the toxins or foreign bodies that were in there, and the immune system is stuck having to clean out even more. And this research shows you'll have more headaches in the future if you take an aspirin to resolve it now. So the real solution is, how do we help the immune system to get the job done, not have to work so hard or so long? And that's where even having a fever, a flu, a cold once or twice a year is actually helps prevent cancer, because it's cleaning out. If you have a stomach flu, it's not just cleaning out the virus that we think of, oh, that's the trigger. Yeah, okay, that's the trigger, and the immune system is creating the flu symptoms, and it's cleaning out everything in that tissue, all the buildup of toxins from the past year.
If you have a particular health question you would like to ask Dr. Glenn and would like to know what is the best natural remedy to use instead of toxic pharmaceuticals, you can email me your question at kwgruber@yahoo.com. And you can go to his website, remedymatch.com, to purchase one of Dr. Swartout's products. As a listener of World Awakenings, make sure to use the discount code AWAKE, that's all capital letters, AWAKE, to receive your 10% off discount. Hey, welcome once again, my friends, to another awesome episode of World Awakenings, a fast track to enlightenment. I'm your host, Carl Gruber. I absolutely love it when this show stays aligned with the beautiful teachings of the modern spiritual guide called A Course in Miracles. And this is one of those shows. Now, if you desire to seek your higher, more loving self, you're in the right place. Before we meet our guest, I'm proud to tell you, however, that this show, after 7 years in production, has been selected by Feedspot.com as the number 2 of the top 20 metaphysical podcasts in the world. Woohoo! So I appreciate it. Thank you, friends. Also, you can now not only watch this show on YouTube, but you can also watch it on your home TV on the new TV network, New Reality TV. Just scan the QR code you see on the screen and check it out. So thank you for that. Well, let's meet our guest today, Celina Granato. From a young age, she wanted to understand the nature of reality, and by her mid-20s, she had explored various paths in search of genuine peace when she was introduced to A Course in Miracles, which became her primary spiritual practice, guiding her through life's challenges by focusing on a thought system of true forgiveness. Originally from the American Midwest and raised in the salt-of-the-earth community with a multicultural upbringing. I like that. Selena sees interpersonal relationships as some of the greatest opportunities for doing inner work. Now a student of the Course for over 20 years, she understands that the Course is a self-study practice for the mind, and being uncompromising to the principles of the Course leads to genuine spiritual growth. Hear, hear. She is currently the Chief International and Communications Officer at the Foundation for Inner Peace, the official publisher of A Course in Miracles. That is so cool, Selena. Thank you for being on World Awakenings.
Hey, Carl, thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you. So it's going to be a fun conversation.
Well, you know, as you can tell, I'm just over the moon when I can talk about the Course. As I know you are, anything we can do to help spread the truth and the beauty of it. But, you know, before we dive into your life and things about you, I'm so grateful, like I said, to have you on the show, since we're both dedicated students of the Course. Before we find out more about you, your path to finding and studying the Course, would you care to give us a short explanation of just how the Course came into being and what it's all about? I know that's kind of a big ask, but if you could do that.
It is a big ask, but I'll try my best here. For those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of students do know, but I'll do it like a high-level overview. So the Course actually here, as we're recording and talking, is 2025. It's been in print now for 50 years. So that's when the first the first printings happened. But about 10 years before that is really when it began by 2 Colombian psychologists, doctors Helen Schuckman and William Thetford, came together through a shared decision at Columbia University that there's got to be a better way. There was a lot of conflict and strife in their relationship, and also relationships within the department. They had worked together. They were both brilliant minds and very dedicated to their work and their patients and their practice and their expertise of psychology. But it was right around 1965, I think, that Helen started hearing a voice, around October of 65, as I recall. And this voice came, it was sort of it was an inner voice that came to her that was very clear. And she heard it, she listened to what it was saying. She didn't like it very much, how it was happening. But this voice came after a series of dreams she had been having that summer, and also after she and Bill had made the decision there's got to be a better way. He said that there's got to be a better way than what they were experiencing. And she said, yes, Bill, and I'm here to help you find it. So there was first that decision, that commitment there, and then things began to unravel. So months later, as the voice occurred, she wasn't very happy about it. And she came, she said, oh, this has been happening to me. What is it I need to do? I'm not okay with this at all. And Bill said something really gently to her, something like, why don't you come to the office tomorrow? Let's take a look. Why don't you write down what it's saying? Let me take a look at these, your writings. And you know what? If it's just a bunch of gibberish, we throw it away and nobody will ever know. And if, you write something down, let's just look at it together. So that's exactly what she did. She took her steno books and wrote down exactly what she was getting from this inner guidance, this inner voice. And they came to Bill the next day, and it was like, wow, there is really something here worth learning, something here worth that's showing us that there's got to be a better way of looking at relationships, looking at what this experience is. And that's sort of how the course was born. Now, not right away. It took about, I think, 65 to 73. Helen was probably working out a little bit of, I'll say, bugs, like really learning to practice hearing the voice. But it was through a period of 7 years, she and Bill, and we consider Bill a co-scribe as well, even though the voice came through Helen, they co-scribed a course in miracles. This is a course in miracles. Please take note. And she wrote it down. And so this was for about a period of 7 years. Okay. So along that time, a few years later, that's when, and most course students are familiar with the names uh, 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 Dr. Ken, sorry, Ken and Judy Skutch-Whitson. And when they came into the picture, Ken was also a psychologist and helped with a lot of the finalization of the publishing and started putting Roman numerals and putting things in their place. And then it was Judith Skutch-Whitson, who's our founder here at our one of the co-founders of the Foundation for Inner Peace. And she was the one with the four of them together, decided that they would begin to publish this and share it with the world. And that was about 1975. So about 10 years after the inception of the writing. And yeah, so that's really how it began as far as the form it took. But what it's saying is something much deeper, and it is really, in essence, a document, a teaching that is meant to be a self-study that is about forgiveness. And that forgiveness is generally how the world has historically or traditionally thought about forgiveness, but forgiveness in a way to where it is about looking within yourself. It's an inner work. It is about getting in connection with God. It's about pure awareness, understanding that love in God is the only reality, and God is love, which is pure awareness. And so this idea of forgiveness is really an understanding that the experience we are having is just that, an experience, and that our true, real essence, our natural inheritance is that we're really love. We're really at home. It's safe with God. Now that's really deep. That's really deep because everything in our experience in the world is telling us often something differently, okay, about being out in the world. And not always, but often has been our experience in this world. So this course is really a course in miracles. It's not just the course is not the only path, but it is a course that points the way to looking inside again and looking at what can come up in the mind and seeing it with the Holy Spirit. So much in the same way that Helen and Bill said there's got to be a better way. Most of the people who come to the course on the spiritual path at some point have realized, okay, there has got to be a better way to believe, think, live this life, um, start to overlook all of these pains and sufferings I've been experiencing. So yeah, so it is a path home. And from my personal experience, I've been a student for 20 years, as you said, but I see it as a non-dualistic, purely non-dualistic path, which for me means that there is no compromise. There is only God in reality. God is the only reality, and that is our true oneness experience. And that's where it ultimately is leading us. And that's deep.
Wow, the words that changed the world. There has got to be a better way, and we all ask that. But thank you for that explanation. It was a big ask. If I had to do it, I'd be stumbling and bumbling around for 7 hours. So, but beautiful. Yes, that is the what a course is all about. Now, let's go to you. Now, you already mentioned forgiveness, and my understanding is that your journey to coming to the A Course in Miracles involves some forgiveness, and you had quite a story of your own dealing with a divorce, I believe. Is that something you care to talk about?
Oh, sure, sure. I know what you're talking about. I did a podcast about a little over a year ago about on Miracle Voices and share a forgiveness story. And I chose that because that's particular story on forgiveness because, well, in my life experience, it was a big deal. It was a huge life event, and it really had a lot to do with changing not only things were happening externally in the script in the world, but really it was my first big opportunity, a slow burn, as a lot of course students like to say, of really applying the principles of forgiveness. So there's certainly that. It's probably been one of my biggest lessons. But I mean, there's lots of things. You can talk about relationships and anxiety and different things that have come up for me in the world. So you can pick your poison there. We can go a lot of different directions with this, but I'm happy to talk about that. Yeah. So. Would you
Well,
like me
and
to do that?
I do believe we all have our own forgiveness lessons. That's for sure. I mean, we all do. But I'm curious if there is one aspect of the course's teachings that you would want anyone who studies it to take away and integrate into their life. What would that be?
Oh, goodness. So, one aspect of the course is teachings to integrate in your life. So, first of all, I would say it's really truly an understanding of what the course is saying and practicing. So that if I were to answer that question, it would be to practice what the course is saying. I used all these lofty words to describe it at the beginning, but really, A Course in Miracles is really a thought system. It's a practice. The course itself says, I am a self-study teaching. It's a self-study teaching. Jesus in the course says that. That doesn't mean you can't go out and you can't have discussion and be in discussion groups and do discussion with others. Absolutely, we have a lot of discussion at the foundation, so you can certainly do that. But it really is about going within and practicing this thought system of forgiveness. That would be the one thing I would like to bring up. And so, what does that mean? It's really, I think, a simple process. Now that I've been studying 20 years, I can say it's simple as far as the steps. Is it always easy? Still no, there's some resistance there. But what I would say is you go inside and then anything you become aware. You are just aware of what's coming up in your mind. So as something comes up, and I like to say, knocks you off of your piece. Okay, that's a great way to start. And you don't have to start with like the really big stuff, but like the little things that come up, you can start saying, oh, I see this. Okay, I'm experiencing this, but let me now, I'm willing to see this differently. And you watch it with the Holy Spirit. And what does that mean? Watch it, you allow it, you allow it, and I'm using the words a lot more now in pure love. This is what I'm understanding this watching to be. It's really pure awareness. This is what love is. So you're willing to look at it differently, fully love it by being in your pure awareness.
Well, that's a beautiful explanation. I think recently I've been studying the text where, let's see, it's the lessons of the Holy Spirit. And one that I've really been trying to practice, I'm still trying to get consistent with, is be vigilant only for God and his kingdom.
Yeah.
And I have found that as I practice that on a moment to moment basis through my day, everything just seems to flow right along and be in accord and alignment with a happy, joyful, peaceful life. Unfortunately, I'm not that as consistent as I should be, but now that I understand that, I kick myself in the butt. Come on, get back there. And as soon as I do, as soon as I get out of accord and I'm not being vigilant, my things get weird. But when I
Yeah.
am consistently vigilant about it, like I said, everything gets back in alignment.
Yeah. Isn't that true? And with practice, like practice makes progress.
Mm.
Um, and so what I am realizing is like you first you become aware and then you kind of become more aware in a way. It's like your awareness enhances. Sometimes I even get to the point where I can almost see myself having the experience. Now, it's not like some sort of out of body thing, but I could almost see myself from the part of mind. So if the mind, let's say the mind is split, we have this section of the mind that likes to run off of the ego operating system and see things as unfair and victimize what we think is our identity and all the different things that most all of us experience here in the human world, right? So we have that part. And then there is the part that once you practice with seeing things in love, seeing things with your right mind, seeing things with the Holy Spirit, it seems like that part you just become a little bit more attuned to that, right? And sometimes because the ego thought system has a tendency, it really wants to get your attention. It usually it speaks loudest, it speaks first. A lot of my practice, especially in the early days, okay, now what is this? Where is this coming from? I'd have to take a step back to really look what's coming up from. But I'm also starting to see that when we're vigilant and we're operating from the right mind, it is um, you know, it's a peaceful, loving feeling and it's a kind feeling. So the more I get that, the more I practice it. But I also see, okay, the more I have to practice because then I'm like, wait a second, is this truly peaceful and kind? What I feel like, okay, let me take a step back. So yes, it's definitely back and forth. And I think that's one of the biggest things, isn't it? Like to be vigilant. That's really a central tenet of the course. It's asking us is to, okay, be mindful. Look, how are you looking at this experience in front of you?
Yeah, and it's a great reminder. So, we are talking to Celina Granato, the Chief Communications Officer for the publisher of A Course in Miracles, the Foundation for Inner Peace, which is very cool. Now, my listeners, this is episode number 206. Know that I have had one of the most famous teachers of A Course in Miracles on this show, Gary Renard, at least 3 times. I've had his wife on, but I think it's very appropriate that maybe we need to discuss how Gary Renard's groundbreaking book, The Disappearance of the Universe, is an important stepping stone to help people to understand more clearly exactly what the Course is all about and how to understand it more easily. I know many people, because much of it is written in iambic pentameter, and even Gary told me once he first started reading, he goes, "What the hell is this? This is Gary." Well, what would you say is a good route to read that book? Is that a good idea for a new student?
I have to largely speak from my perspective, and I know my direct experience is not one that's representative of Foundation for Inner Peace, so I should say that. But I will tell you in my experience, And when I first started with the Course in Miracles, I really give Gary and even Cindy, I've followed so much of her in the last few years too. But Gary's book 20 years ago, a little more than 20 now, has really been instrumental in helping to understand. It was for me in helping to understand A Course in Miracles. So many students, either I've met in person or I've heard over the years, have said the same thing. And I'm really sort of struck by how much the stories have been the same, and maybe it's been that way for you too, Carl. But I mean, I think you've been studying it a little bit even longer than myself, but I remember coming into it like around 2001 is probably where for me individually, I had another like I don't know how to really say this, but there was a shift that happened in the mind that helped open me up to even a little bit deeper of a spiritual path. Okay. And it was not long after this that had occurred for me that as when I first actually heard about A Course in Miracles. Now, A Course in Miracles has been published in 75, and a lot of people have been studying it since 70s and 80s. But I was deepening and going down the spiritual path, and then that came up to me around '01, and I immediately felt drawn to it. I immediately felt drawn to this. Oh, I want to know more. And the internet was really um, um, unsophisticated back then.
Right.
Now one. And so I would, peruse the internet and try to find things. And then I didn't even buy the book. And then in '03, there was an aunt who came and she had gone to a Unity church in Florida and said, I was given two of these books. I felt very drawn to giving one to you. I looked at it. It was A Course in Miracles. I said, oh my gosh, I've been so interested in this. I have not gotten the book yet, but thank you so much. And I remember feeling so delighted at that. And then going and opening up and trying to read it. And then I was like, oh goodness.
Mhm.
Just like you said with the iambic pentameter, it has a Shakespearean sort of prose. I mean, it is written in a much different way than that we speak here in our modern world. And so I was like, oh my goodness. And then some of the like double negatives, the buts, and which really means not. I was like, okay, this is really hard for me to get my mind around. And I closed the book and I put it in my bookshelf, still drawn to it, but I'm thinking, okay, I don't know if I'm quite ready. But it was in 2005 that another colleague had given me that book, The Disappearance of the Universe by Gary. And that really, it was a pivotal moment for me. Not only do I love all of Gary's books, and I found that so eye-opening and it really drew me in, his personal story, but I give it credit, and I think this is what, the books are meant to do, is really to bring students to the course even more, to help them understand it so they will want to practice it. And I think that's so true for thousands, if not at this point, millions of people. I've heard so many people who have used the book. So, yeah, I mean, I think it is just regular language. It tells stories that were very relatable, as you know. With Gary, is a very honest person, and he uses himself as an example. And we saw a lot about his life, and yet he had this experience of having these ascended masters, these what he calls his teachers, show up for him in 1992 and stayed with him, and still to this day, as I understand, still make appearances to him. So yeah, it's both fascinating. There's that aspect, but then everything that they cover, as far as how we perceive the world and how much we really make this world very real. It starts to point the fact that really the world is an experience, and you are very much identified with an identity of who you think you are here. Now, that's very true. And I'm not trying to go too deep and too woo-woo. But when you look at it that way and you start to take a step back and be like, yeah, it is true. Like, what am I? I think I'm this person named Selena, who is now a woman living in North America who had these set of experiences. Sure, that's all true in the experience, okay, in this level. But is that who I really am? Who am I really?
Mhm.
And do these set of experiences, does my identity, does that define who I am? And so I think spiritual students, what we are doing now is we're going deeper. We're going deeper, especially in the state of what many people across this world are experiencing today. They're realizing, oh gosh, we always look to leaders and for external authority and we still do to some extent, but I think more and more, especially in the last several years, people are starting to turn inward and looking for answers there. So I think I've gotten off track a little bit, but Gary Renard's book, the teachings from his teachers and all of his books are very helpful to reiterate those right-minded thoughts, to discuss what forgiveness really is, and to help pointing the way that what we're having, I mean, even A Course in Miracles says, so many times the world is not real. Now that's really, really hard. Okay, that's really hard. And it's not always seemingly kind to some people who are like, wait, I'm not ready to hear that. Okay. I certainly wasn't at some time. It took me a while to get there. And I had a lot of discomfort in the early, early days to start understanding those principles. But the Holy Spirit, as the Course teaches us, is this gentle, merciful helper that we are given to lead us home to God. And every experience I have with that is loving and kind. So even though there might be pointers showing me that the world and my identity is not what I think it is, it's always in a loving and kind way. And so, yeah.
I find it really interesting. You and I kind of came to the course in the same time frame in a little bit of the same way. I was listening 2002. I heard an interview of Tony Robbins interviewing Dr. Wayne Dyer, and Wayne Dyer mentioned A Course in Miracles. I go, what? And so I drove right over to Barnes and Noble and bought a copy, brought it home, proceeded to put it on my shelf and let it sit there for 2 years before I even opened it up. And then, going back to Gary Renard's The Disappearance of the Universe, I love you explained it, you nailed it, because it's kind of like more plain language explaining what at first seems very complicated when you're reading the Course itself, the text. I call Gary's book the primer for before reading A Course in Miracles. It helps you ease into it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I had a feeling that our stories were similar when I read a little bit about you and studying before. I'm like, oh, we've been studying almost as long. But yeah, I agree. The stories are very relatable, also very humorous, also just very quote unquote real in the way that he's having a bad day. There's an experience like, I don't really like that person. His teachers would be like, whoa, 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 okay, let's see what's going on there, right? And I think that that helped all of us. And that's exactly what the Course is saying too. Okay, it speaks how many times, thousands of times, how it mentions, your salvation is in your brother and how you look at your brother. And that in itself is just such a beautiful teaching to remember.
Yeah, yeah. We really are fortunate. I've had the good fortune to go to a couple workshops with Gary and got to go to dinner with him and Cindy, and it was just a blessing to have fun with it. But going back to the course itself, I mean, it's growing and growing all these years, 50 years now. I would like to know where do you think A Course in Miracles stands in the world? How many copies have been sold since it was first published? How many languages has it been translated into? And what do you think is the future of this book and its teachings?
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, I can only tell you what I think mostly intuitively, and where I think my pulse is, and where the pulse is on the course, and I'm happy to do that. I can certainly tell you that the course seems to be growing. Well, I don't have exact numbers of how many that we've sold. It's got to be upwards of 4 million, if not more, of the version that the foundation sells. So I can tell you that. And then it's also, we have 27 current translations in different languages of A Course in Miracles, and we're working on three others this year. So by 2026, there'll be 30 translations. And yeah, it's 50 years old. It seems like what I'm seeing, at least more and more from the standpoint of also overseeing our permissions and licensing team, is we're getting a lot of people asking for different permissions on how to use the course. Of like, I use these quotes, et cetera, et cetera. I think a sliver of how many people are actually talking about the course, those requests are coming in, but it's just a sliver, I think, of what is really, really happening. If you do a search, there's so many people talking about A Course in Miracles now, and whether that's on YouTube or blogs, I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of teachers, and not only in English. And, having now that I'm a part of the foundation, I'm very connected with people internationally and have done searches in Spanish and other language, and there's a lot going on. A lot going on. I'll tell you that.
And some people even have whole podcasts about A Course in Miracles.
Exactly. They do.
But what amazing is since 50 years since the two professors from Columbia and Ken Wapnick and Judith Scutch moved to California, and I believe it's based in Mill Valley, California now in the Bay Area. How far it's come and beautiful, beautiful influence and change in the world. And now you're part of it. Thank you for doing what you do.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. Yes. And yes, the headquarters of Foundation for Inner Peace is no longer a Mill Valley address. It's a Nevada address, but we are still in the Bay Area. Yeah.
There is, and this is one of the first lines of the course that really stuck with me. There's a beautiful line in the course right at the front of the book that says, "Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God." I think the very first time I read that line, I don't think I really understood what it means. So what exactly does this line mean to each and every one of us who's experienced life in this body?
Yeah. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. So, something I'd like to share that I know some spiritual students have had an experience with, I call it revelation. Some have not. But I will say, I will speak to it from my experience of having a revelation. And so this was many years ago. It was actually before I was a core student. I had a set of mystical experiences that I think now I look back on it and I see how these experiences have propelled me down a spiritual path even more to find like the answers of what exactly happened. But when I was about 17 years old, I was going through a difficult time, and just being a teenager is tough anyway. There's a lot of things, and you're growing, you're trying to understand the world around you. There's more pressures from society, whatever. At the time, I think with work and trying to do well to get into college, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember going through a very dark period. And I didn't really understand what it was. I would not have called it depression at the time, even though I'm sure if I went to see a practitioner or a clinician about it, I would have been diagnosed with that. But it was such a difficult time that it brought me to a place where I kept getting sinking, going deeper, deeper, darker, darker over the course of a few months. And then one day, something happened where I didn't get a turn in some homework and different things. And I remember all of a sudden something gently switched. It shifted in my perception. And then I will say almost all of a sudden, it was almost like I had one foot in this world and one foot in another realm. But it's a very, I call it revelation, and a course talks about this. So I hope people look this up if they're unfamiliar with it. But it's a very direct experience. It's a very personal experience that you have with God. is what the Course will say. And it's a temporary suspension of space and time, which is exactly what it was for me. But what I experienced in that time, and it was, again, I was feeling very, very low, my worldly identity. Okay. It was so bad that I was like, I don't even want to be here anymore, sort of like that. Okay. And I remember being in class and it shifted so much that I had this experience of truly perfect love, true perfect love. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. It was, they believe the Bible talks of a peace that passes all understanding. It was that. It was all I can use is it's almost, and I think a course even talks about, you can't, it's ineffable. Like you can't really even talk about it because it's such a personal experience. There aren't any words to properly describe this, but all I can do is point the way to say that it was absolute perfect peace. It was the most love I had ever felt in my life. With all the relationships and support that I have had in this world, and especially at that time growing up, um, it was nothing like the love I have experienced in this world in my interpersonal relationships. And it was showing me very gently that you're already whole and you are already perfect. And what you're experiencing is nothing at all. That in itself, I love that quote that you said is at the beginning of A Course in Miracles, because for me, in my experience, propelling me down the spiritual path, even though I found the Course, it was many years later, that was it really for the beginning for me. I think so many people, we often come to a place of discomfort and suffering for us to go deeper. Okay. And for whatever reason, in my mind at that time, I felt like I sort of took a step out of this worldly identity, not by myself, with help. And just for a few moments, it probably lasted a few minutes. It was the most ultimate, perfect, beautiful experience. And that I know now, didn't know this until I started studying A Course in Miracles, but that in itself was what the Course describes as revelation. And that is the best way I can describe what that quote means.
Mm. Well, I haven't personally had any real dramatic, spiritual, be in the moment of pure love. Now, I will say, as a student, when I do touch more into that place of aligning perfectly with my source and the unity of all that is, isn't it beautiful how when you get in that place of pure love, peace also comes with it? As soon as I am in that realm, I immediately feel much more peaceful. I love that.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. And the course close to the beginning of the text, it will speak about, all you need is a little willingness. You hear a lot of people say you just need a little willingness. And I think it is just that being able to want it, to have the little willingness to shift and to be able to see things differently, to ask the Holy Spirit, to ask Jesus, to look at the world or the script with you, holding Jesus's hand, that in itself is immediately transformative for me. Okay. And sometimes for really big things, you just need to practice on it, but you can almost immediately feel that shift. And I love that. It's just really, like you said, it's like having that willingness, going there and feeling immediately better. Now, of course, later in the course, in the manual for teachers, it does talk about you need to have an abundant amount of willingness. And I think there's truth to that as well, because it takes, we do this course over a period of years. You can certainly do it very well for the rest of one's days here on Earth. And it takes a commitment to be uncompromising to this practice. That comes in time.
Yeah, commitment. I've been reading a lot about consistency too, which is important when you're aligning with back home with your higher self. Well, Selena, as you already found out, I have this tendency to ask really large questions. So I'm going to shift gears again here. Let's discuss the ego. Many modern psychologists say that your ego is your friend. Well, that's not exactly how the Course looks at the ego. As a matter of fact, it says the ego is not your friend, right? What are your thoughts on this?
I would have to, I totally understand both sides, but what the Course brings our attention to is no, the ego is not your friend. The ego is trying to kill you. I mean, that pretty clearly in chapter 9. So it was definitely worth a reread. Um, what I would say is, first of all, that has been really helpful for me. That has been helpful for me because it really gives me a framework on what it is I'm doing when I am employing the thought system of the ego. The ego's thought system is one that's divisive. Okay, it's one that makes you a victim. It puts everything outside of yourself. It takes the guilt in the mind and projects it onto your brother. It will do anything to try to keep you feeling safe. Okay, so even modern psychology, we'll talk about the ego, about that. Like there's benefits to it. It tries to keep us safe. Okay, but of course, and Jesus is teaching us to go deeper. Okay, and to really, and again, this is a practice of the mind. I'm not saying we have to take any outright action unless we're inspired to do so, but really to go in and understand that when we are looking and thinking about things with the ego, and that's by ourselves, because there's a caveat to this, only with the ego, I mean, it's really for the purposes of destroying and keeping the guilt away from your mind so you think you seemingly feel better. But what's really happening is you have the guilt, you're not looking at it with the Holy Spirit, it's not being transformed, but projecting it outward on your brother without doing the inner work just keep reinforces the dream experience. Okay. And it just keeps reinforces the so-called emotion energy and more so, moreover, the guilt in your mind. Okay. There's not shifts happening. Now, people can easily say this, but oh, the ego, it's such a bad thing. I need to hate the ego. And I'm not saying do that either, because that in itself is a trick. The ego would love for you to hate. But the beautiful thing about this practice is the Holy Spirit uses the ego to undo the ego. So we're not saying just be normal in your life. We're not saying act holier than thou. We're not saying do spiritual bypassing. What the Holy Spirit is asking us to do is to look at whatever is coming up in the mind. You don't even have to say anything to anyone, but look what's coming up in the mind and see it with love. See it in pure awareness. If it helps for you, that image, a lot of course students, and I think it was Dr. Kenneth Wapnick who brought this up, like hold Jesus' hand and watch it on the movie screen. I love that particular practice for myself. But the Holy Spirit uses the ego to undo the ego. So we look at the ego with help. We do it with help. We don't try to undo it ourselves. It won't work. Okay, we're too much into its thought system because we really deeply, out of our awareness, we are very, very identified with it. There's so much pain and guilt so deep on it's our subconscious that if we weren't able to do this gently, easily with help from God, Holy Spirit, then it would be very difficult. It would be, impossible without their help, but it's just a gentle process in this dream experience.
Well, thank you for that explanation because that's not an easy topic. I think people who aren't sure, well, who's talking to me, the ego or God? And we know that the ego will always speak first and the loudest with the most urgency, whereas God or source will always gently speak to you and quietly. I found myself, it's almost like when I know source is talking to me, I'm just it's like a tap on the shoulder. Hey, remember do this, and yeah, and I found that there are even times where I'm sitting there and I know I feeling very close to source. All of a sudden, this voice will come on. You stupid idiot! What are you doing? I just whoa! I know who's talking to me there.
Yeah. No, it's true. And earlier you asked me how I felt talking about some of the slow burns or forgiveness opportunities, and we had mentioned my divorce, but just for practical application that might help viewers understand better is, use what comes up in your life. Now, for me, in that experience, that was kind of a big thing. But I had been studying the course for 4 years. Apparently, Jesus thought I was ready for some real rubber meets the road application. And you know what? I was certainly willing when it happened. And without going too much into the details, people can listen to that Miracle Voices podcast if they would like to know more. But, when you're going through something where you feel like you've been betrayed, someone has done you so wrong. And not only that, but then you find yourself, oh, I'm losing my house, my community. All of these things are changing. It almost compounds experience. Like it was kind of a big thing. But I remember that when it happened, I immediately, and I realized what was happening in front of me. I immediately went into another room and fell on my knees. And I said, you be in charge. You show me how to do this. You show me how to look at this and the way that you would want. You show me because I knew theoretically that nobody's really out there. Nothing has really happened. Okay. It's like all done. I knew as a course student, even in the early days, that this was all a presentation, a grand projection being played out in front of me in my experience. Okay. And it was very easy to take all the pain and be like, you did this, you did this. And from the level of the world, there were a lot of things that had occurred during that time that you could say, oh, you know, it does seem that she was really victimized there. But I knew to go deeper. And so, all these things that we've been talking about, when it happens, you ask for help to look at it differently. And you understand the thought system that we've already explained here, but you just keep vigilant at it. And especially with the big burns, you'd have to give yourself grace. You have to know that because we are in a dream of time and space, it's going to probably take some time and things will come up and then you forgive it and it'll come up again. And sometimes it seems like endless, but the course also says you don't know what anything is for. And
Mm.
so I can only imagine, and I have to trust the guidance, the teacher that was given to me knows what they're doing, that I am applying the practice, and that great shifts of transformation are occurring within the mind, the Son of God. And this is my part in the projection that I was given to apply these principles. Because there's only truly one of us, even though the world now appears to have 8 billion people and the universe and beyond, I'm sure, has infinite number of beings. But let me look at how big the script can appear to be when A Course in Miracles tells us there's only the one Son of God, and you're it.
Wow. Well, we are speaking to Celina Granato, the Chief Communications Officer for the Foundation for Inner Peace, the publisher of A Course in Miracles. We're going to wind up with the last couple minutes here. And thank you, Selena. Many of my guests here on this show over the last 7 years I've been doing it have said that humanity is on the cusp of a dramatic transformation into an age of enlightenment and awakening. What do you think about this?
You know, I of course feel that there's something happening. And I would think so too. If anybody who is involved in metaphysics or on the spiritual path and Some of us go really deep and like the symbolism and the woo-woo-ness, and they have followed the harmonic convergence of 87. And then in 2012, it's like, what is it? It's now the age of Aquarius and the end of the Mayan calendar. I mean, you can go down those paths and they can really, I don't think I like them. They're interesting, but I don't give them too much thought because they can also be a distraction. But it does seem, at least, from my experience, seeing how many people are on a spiritual path, and it's not just A Course in Miracles, but there's a lot more teachers, many non-dualistic, some not, but it does seem like there is an explosion of people that are, again, more spiritual and not religious, not dogma involved, people who are willing to look inside, go inside, ask these questions about themselves. It seems that collective consciousness, I will say, has been raising. And that would mean for the individual that they're willing to ask harder questions, more productive questions, people are wanting to take responsibility in their life. They're no longer looking at external structures or governments or political control or religions to help guide themselves. They're going within. And I think we're seeing this in every direction, no matter whether you're a course student or what type of spiritual student that you are and whatever level you're at. I think we're seeing that. So I don't know if I fully answered that question, but
No, it's great. Selena, I really appreciate you being on here. I think we could probably do another 87 episodes. So we're going to have to make it the Selena and Carl show. But, we have to head out here. But can you please tell us how people can contact, support, and find out more about A Course in Miracles and its publisher and the keeper, the foundation of For Inner Peace?
absolutely. Thank you for asking. So the Foundation for Inner Peace, of course, we are the original scribe authorized publisher of A Course in Miracles. We're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. Of course, it's 50th anniversary of the first printing in 1975, I should say. But you can find us, and I think one of the best ways right now, and it's easy, is acim.org. acim.org, A Course in Miracles.org is our internet address. And from there, you can certainly sign up on our newsletter. We are a foundation that works and that depends on donations. So there's a way to donate as well. We do have a lot of information about our history, our translators, but we are still printing A Course in Miracles, and we're also expanding it not only in other languages like I talked earlier, but in digital products as well. And we always make space for these types of communications discussions with our own webinar series, which we have one at least once a month. So learn more about us there at acim.org. And we're online on all the social media channels too.
And I have to say that acim.org is a beautiful website. I utilize it all the time, and a great way to check it out. Celina Granato, thank you. What a beautiful opportunity to have you on World Awakenings. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you. So happy to be here.
This has been another episode of World Awakenings, the fast track to enlightenment with host Carl Gruber, a certified law of attraction life coach. We welcome you to tune in to each and every episode of World Awakenings as we open your mind, your heart, and your eyes to the fact that the world's population is now, more than ever, awakening to the truth of all things spiritual, metaphysical, and enlightening, and just how much they play an all-important role in our moment-to-moment daily life. Much love and light to you, my friend, and thank you for tuning into World Awakenings.